Hi, my name is Laura Roden, and tonight I'm going to be speaking to you about the murder felony rule. And the case that I'm going to be talking about is a famous story about a prison break in 1978 with Gary Tyson and his sons and one other inmate, where at this prison they were allowed to have family get-togethers and picnics and stuff, and the sons, three of them, came in and they brought in with them guns hidden in what they brought in, and they helped to break their father out of prison and this other inmate. And when they did this, they escaped, drove away in one of the sons' cars, and then along the way, the next day, they had a flat tire. Well, this young family, a father and mother, their children, and a young niece were on a trip, and they stopped to help them. And while they were helping them, some of the guys came from behind. They ended up taking that whole family, and the main prisoner who escaped, Gary, and the other inmate, plus one of the sons, ended up taking the family and killing them. And the others were there to witness it. And then they continued to run away from the law, and also ended up killing another young couple and taking their van. And then they were apprehended by a roadblock. The one son was killed, and the father, Gary, ended up escaping into the desert, but ended up meeting his own demise and dying in the desert. The other two sons and the other inmate were captured and then put on trial. They all were sentenced for the murders and put on death row. Well, later on, the two sons, there were some things that came up, and because they were under the age of 20 at that time, they, in their second trial, they were sentenced to just life in prison. But the other inmate, he ended up being executed. So, in my opinion, the law is a good one. And I feel like they participated, whether they shot the people or not, and they were there. They saw what happened, especially after the first one. And they could have made a decision at that point, possibly, even though I know it was family, to not participate any further than what they did. So they had a choice to make. And yet they went on, and this other couple was murdered as a part of it. So I do believe that when people make that choice, where it causes the loss of life, then they should be tried for this law anyway, and they should be convicted, and they should, have to pay the consequences of the murders. So that's just my opinion. I do believe that it's a good law, and I think it's one that should stay in place. I don't agree with the fact that just because they were under the age of 20 that they were able to get off with life. And I think that they were old enough to know what they were doing. And I'm sure that because of their age, they probably use part of the science that their frontal lobe was not fully developed, and so that they couldn't really be held accountable for what they did because they weren't mature enough and developed enough to make wise decisions. So anyway, this is just my opinion. I believe that all that were involved should have been convicted and executed. Thank you very much for listening.